Greetings and welcome to another edition of AUHSD Future Talks. I'm your host, Michael Matsuda, the superintendent of the Anaheim Union High School District. And as our 8,000 plus podcasters know, this program is dedicated to the future of schools and its relevance to our young people across America. We've been so lucky to have amazing guests, and today's guest is Karen Hunter Quartz, the director of UCLA Center for Community Schooling. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
We always start with sort of a little bit of background on who you are. I know you're I think from Canada, and how did you end up at UCLA?
Yeah, well, it does go way back to, I am from Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, and I went to university there to study philosophy. And I was taken by the ideas and really wrapped up in sort of what philosophy and philosophers can help us, how they can help us think about the world, and in particular, how they can help us think about education. So I moved to Los Angeles to go to graduate school at UCLA. I studied with Jeannie Oakes and had the wonderful opportunity to really study American schools, American school systems. Did a big study of middle school reform. It was called Turning Points way back when. And we wrote a book called Becoming Good American Schools. And that was an opportunity to really flesh out how we do school change in this country and the kind of struggle between individual freedom and civic virtue. So that was the beginning of my career as an academic at UCLA, and I stayed. I've done some teaching. I taught down at UC San Diego. I've also done a lot of different research projects on things like retaining teachers in urban schools. But my dream came true when in 2007 I had an opportunity to write a proposal to start a new school. And that was after many years of organizing to create the conditions for teacher autonomy in LA Unified, and worked alongside union and district and community folks to create the pilot school initiative in LA, and then helped write the first pilot school proposal to start the UCLA Community School. So that's how I got into this business. I pinch myself all the time because I just love what I do, and I feel so lucky.
You know, and we had the opportunity to visit that school in Koreatown. Amazing work that's being done by the teachers and around voice and agency and identity and civic engagement, all wrapped up into one. And a wonderful accomplishment, Karen. And I know that's sort of helped propel your career as now the director of not only the UCLA Center for Community Schooling, but also someone highly involved in the state transformational center, the STAG for short, that helps oversee all of the community schools across California and the governor's $4.1 billion initiative. Could you share a little bit about what the STAG is charged with doing, and now that we're already over a year and a half into the grant?
Sure. This is an amazing historic opportunity. No other state in the country has devoted this level of resourcing to community schools. And so the state Board of Education, the California Department of Education, thought it would be really strategic to have a center that brought together different partners strategically to help translate the legislation and the California framework into a set of supports for California community schools statewide. So our center at UCLA joined with the Alameda County Office of Education, the National Education Association, and Californians for Justice, who had led with the Partnership for the Future of Learning a lot of the grassroots efforts in California to help this funding get underway and get supported. So the STAC are these four organizations. We come together. Our core work is to sort of provide resources and opportunities to learn, that will help inform the journey to becoming a community school. We are getting ready to release a digital commons, which is a website with a lot of these fundamental resources, tools, rubrics, things like that we think are important for community schools as they go down this pathway. We've also been hosting webinars, a collective learning space that brings together grantees. And most recently, we've been collaborating really closely with 8 regional technical assistance centers. So the idea statewide was to select a lead organization that would then work with 8 other organizations, 8 RTACs they're called, to create coherence across the state. And so those are our partners in this transformational assistance process. As you know very well, we have also, as part of our effort to ground and deepen practice in California, we've selected 3 deep dive sites. Anaheim Union is one of our sites, and have hosted with you people from all the different RTACs and leaders in California to come and see what it looks like on the ground in very special places like your district. And that, in my opinion, is one of the most important things we can do, because it helps the state see what's possible. It doesn't just provide a resource, it provides a story, a set of people, a set of connections. So I think that's very, very important. Another one of our strategies is we're helping support data use statewide. And so there's some very critical resources that have been produced by West Ed last year. They did a survey of all the first cohort of grantees, and we are analyzing that, and we will be analyzing a mountain of data that will be submitted in the next few weeks as part of the annual performance report of all grantees. So helping the state see how this is rolling out is really important, and we're charged with that as well.
Your life work has been devoted to community schools grounded in justice and democracy around schooling. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. So for me, community schools just represent the best of public education. It's an over century old movement, right? It started way back in the early, some people talk about it. It's starting with the Settlement House movement and Jane Addams and John Dewey and people that came together to say, schools shouldn't be places set apart. They shouldn't be these institutions that are sterile and taken out of context and put students in egg crates, that idea that we're kind of dividing up students and their content areas and really decontextualizing learning. Learning needs to be in the context of community, and it needs to be supported by people from all different parts of our society and walks of life. So teachers, certainly, but also everyone that works in a school, from the people that work, delivering food, to the people that drive buses, to the people that are aides, to families that walk their students to school, to the social workers that have a caseload there. Everybody makes that school a rich place of learning. And that, to me, is the promise of community schools as kind of the heartbeat of our democracy. John Dewey said that schools are the midwife of democracy, right? Community schools are helping us birth the next generation of our democratic life. And so to do that, they have to be very rich places with relationships connected to real issues, real celebrations, real opportunities that people live and breathe in their communities.
So I think we've talked, you and I, as well as others, about the tension between, there's different types of tensions operating here at schools. One of them is the tension of test scores in reading and math, and what you just described about, a very Paulo Freirean view of communities, John Dewey, of communities and its relationship with schools and democracy. As you know, our model, AUHSD, we've moved beyond testing and teaching to the test. Do you think that that's going to have much traction statewide with community schools?
I certainly hope so. The work that you're leading in performance assessments and capstones, to me, that's the real heart of helping people see what we value in education. So if I can listen to one of your students talk about the 5 C's and hear what it means to be compassionate to them and how they develop that, I'm going to have a much better window into understanding how that school prepared that young person to be a good community member when they leave you, to be a good parent, to be a good friend. And we don't have that kind of evidence when we're looking at a standardized test score, right? So I think the crux of the matter is lifting up evidence that allows us to see the full humanity of young people, stories and metrics that allow us to see that, so we can celebrate and keep that going. Again, this whole child perspective on assessment and kind of evidence that counts that they're flourishing.
Another one of the tensions that you talked about is the tension between trying to promote student voice and agency in the school system and connecting them to career pathways. Could you elaborate on that tension that you see?
Yeah, I think this is a really tricky one. John Dewey talked about how, vocational education can be the feudal dogma of social predestination, right? So we know there's a long history of tracking, and we know that vocational education in particular has steered students down the path that has just reproduced inequality for generations. So this new kind of approach, or this current approach to college and career, to the idea that it's not one or the other, that there's no high or low track, is incredibly important. But it's very hard to make that happen without acknowledging that our world is stratified. There are very many different opportunities for certain kids, right? And students grow up seeing people that they know in particular jobs, people that they don't know in other jobs. And so there's this discontinuity for a young person's life to make sense of, well, what's really possible for me? And I think that, I know you're working really hard at that. And I admire how career is at the center of it. But it also worries me a little bit, because I think that is a finite set of opportunities. And if we really want young people to be free and to pursue whatever they care about, then that's an important constraint to acknowledge.
I think one of the big challenges is also the curation of data in terms of the context of the larger community. There's all kinds of voices, parents, community stakeholders, as well as students and teachers. How do we, and that we're trying to work with AI tools to help curate that data, and so that we can see what is being said, right? Otherwise, it just becomes part of this big din out there. What do you see the role of AI being in terms of not only curating data, but also enhancing the power and the role of community schools?
Gosh, that's a hard question. I guess I don't know fully. I'll start with that. I think that the frontier, as you just saw, the big controversy with OpenAI last week, people are nervous, right? And I think that it's a good moment to be nervous. I think what you're doing in sort of a, with your own language model in a very well monitored, kind of constrained way, is a very strategic move. That's not going to happen everywhere, right? And so how do we think about the potential while also grappling with that kind of moral concern that we're unleashing something we really don't know the future of? And that's a hard place to be as an educator, right? Because you want to have opportunities to learn about it, you want to play with things, you want to understand them, but how do we prepare for sort of the moral uncertainty of where it's heading? I'm not sure.
Yes, as you just said, we are trying to manage AI tools within firewalls with and for teachers to develop more sophisticated approaches to community problem solving. And I think more to come on that for sure. But I also am concerned about the money running out in 3.5 years. What is your message to those districts that have received funding, and where do you see that funding coming from? Because many districts, I think, are expecting more money to come from the state. What is your response to that?
So at a big picture level, right, the funding, although immense, coming from the state of California to support these schools is it is short term. I think it's important at the outset to recognize that's how we do change here. That's how we think change happens. We think change happens when we create a program, a process for getting the money, a process for monitoring the money, a process for evaluating that particular program, and then it ends. So that clearly isn't the way that schools function. Schools function, they live and breathe every day like they're going to be around forever. This is not something that is a business that's going to go out of business, right? I mean, this is a fundamental public good. Excuse me. So the idea that the funding is going away speaks to how we do social change more than it speaks to how you sustain a community school, right? You sustain a community school by having rich partnerships with your community, and by the term that community school, the reform movement talks about is braiding and blending funding, which is an important concept because schools have pots of money from all sorts of places, as you well know. And the genius in bringing all those pots together so they are strategic, they promote a coherent vision of educational practice, flourishing outcomes. That's the leadership key. And so while actual resources are very, very important, the future and the sustainability of this will also rely on people being very mindful that this is not just a program, that this is a way of doing school, that the money hopefully will launch more kind of thoughtful practice around community-based education. But it won't just be, I mean, my hope is it won't just go away when the funding for the coordinator is gone.
Yeah, that's the big multi-billion-dollar question. But I think this concept of braiding and is an important concept for folks in my chair to help, to anticipate that. So we're not just waiting for our hands out, expecting the state to give us more money. I think that's, but at the same time, we've got to create a narrative that will build support from the community for community schools, right? So if you had a chance to advise the next president, whether it's Republican or Democrat or whomever, what advice would you give in terms of community schools being a way to bring the divisions, the political divisions out there together?
It's such a old and compelling idea. The young people in a community are educated by the community in part. I mean, it's what school do we want for our young people here? And everyone agrees, right, that that's an important idea. We want to have a say in the education of our young people in our community, political divisions aside, right? That's a very, important American idea, that public education is something. I'm raising my children. I want to make sure that I've got a hold of that we're working together, that I understand what's being done. And that idea is not just, that's not a program or a community school coordinator, that's democratic education, right? So I guess at the front of it, I would want anyone to frame it that way. This is the future of public education. Education happens in a community context. The more we recognize, lift up, and understand the resources that an entire community brings to bear in the education of a young person, the better. And it's also not, the other message would be, it's not just about the extended programs or health clinics, even though those are very important. It's about the way we do teaching and learning with young people. And it's the kind of work that you are doing, at Magnolia or other schools that are really fundamentally reshaping what counts as learning. Learning is active, it's passion driven, it's connected to real things, it's led by adults that are lit up by what they do and really expert at understanding how young people learn and what excites them. So it's that community-based teaching and learning and those rich learning experiences that are absolutely fundamental, not just to community schools, but to the future of public education in the world we're in right now.
Wow, that's quite a mic drop. Karen, I know the time has gone by very quickly, but on behalf of our 27,000 students and their families, you and your team, the STAC team, and the team from UCLA are just really doing a fantastic job of herding all of these cats across the state of California on behalf of our communities. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
It's always such a pleasure, Mike, to be in conversation with you. So thanks for the invitation.